Dr. Vane snatched the chart from Maya's hands and hurled it across the room. Papers exploded into the air like shrapnel. Then he stepped forward, close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath, and grabbed her wrist. Hard, in front of everyone. "Don't you ever touch my patient again," he hissed through clenched teeth. "You are nothing. You are a name tag and a mop handle. You do not think. You do not speak. You do not exist in my ER unless I say so." He released her. Her wrist bore the red outline of his fingers. And Maya Vance said nothing. She just looked at him, calm, still, certain, like a woman who already knew exactly how this story was going to end. Before we go any further, if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you never miss a story like this one. Drop a comment right now and tell me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now let's go back to the beginning, because what happened inside that military hospital on that rainy Tuesday morning is something none of those Marines will ever forget. The first thing people noticed about Maya Vance was how quiet she was. Not shy quiet, not nervous quiet, the kind of quiet that sits in a room and takes up more space than the loudest person there. The kind of quiet that made experienced nurses glance sideways at her when they thought she wasn't looking. The kind of quiet that Dr. Raymond Vane, chief trauma surgeon of Fort Harlow Military Medical Center, found deeply, personally offensive. She had arrived 6 weeks earlier, transferred from a civilian posting nobody in the building had heard of. Her file was thin. Her references were vague. Her credentials checked out, technically, but everything about the paperwork had the particular blandness of something that had been carefully assembled to say as little as possible. The HR coordinator, a cheerful woman named Donna, who had worked at Fort Harlow for 19 years, had mentioned it to the head of nursing in passing. "It's like her whole background before nursing school just doesn't exist," Donna had said, flipping through the folder. She graduated, she passed boards, she did her rotations. But before that, nothing. No hometown listed, no emergency contact, no next of kin. The head of nursing, Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Hess, had reviewed the file herself and signed off without comment. Some people, she had learned in her career, carried their past in silence on purpose. You didn't dig at that. You watched their hands. You watched how they moved under pressure, and you let the work speak. Maya's work, from her very first shift, spoke in a language nobody in that hospital quite understood. She was fast, not flustered fast, running around bumping into things fast. Economical fast. The kind of fast that came from someone who had done difficult things in small spaces with very few resources and no room for hesitation. She could start a line on a collapsed vein in the time it took most trainees to find the right gauge needle. She could read vitals on a glance and be halfway through a calculation before the monitor had finished its readout cycle. She moved through the ER the way water moves through a narrow channel, quietly, precisely, without wasting a single drop. The other nurses noticed. Some of them liked her. Carla Rodriguez, a 12-year ER veteran with a voice like a foghorn and a laugh that could shake windows, had taken to following Maya's movements with a look of careful, professional respect. "That girl is not what she says she is," Carla had told her husband over dinner one night. "And I mean that as a compliment." The men were less generous. There were 4 male nurses on the day shift rotation, and they had a running bet. Not a mean-spirited bet, they told themselves. Just a friendly wager about whether the new trainee would last through October. The pot was at $60 when Maya arrived. By the end of her second week, 2 of them had quietly withdrawn their money, unwilling to admit why. The other 2 doubled down. And then there was Dr. Vane. Raymond Vane was 53 years old, the son of a general, the grandson of a decorated field surgeon from Korea. He had gone to Johns Hopkins. He had trained at Walter Reed. He had 3 commendations on his office wall and a photograph of himself shaking hands with a former Secretary of Defense. He was, by every measurable standard, an exceptional surgeon. He was also the kind of man who could not tolerate being corrected by someone he had already decided didn't matter. Maya had been at Fort Harlow for 4 days when she first crossed his path. It was a minor thing, a medication dosage on a post-op patient that she had flagged in the chart notes, quietly, professionally, without making any announcement. She had simply written it in the margin in red ink and initialed it. Vane had seen the notation, recognized the handwriting as belonging to the new trainee, and crossed it out with a single black line. The patient had been given the original dosage. 6 hours later, the patient had experienced a reaction that required intervention. Nobody officially connected those two events. The chart was amended. The outcome was managed. But Maya had been standing at the nursing station when the call came in, and the look on her face, not triumphant, not angry, just quietly, deeply certain, had etched itself into Raymond Vane's memory like a burn. He had made it his project after that to ensure she understood her place. "Trainee," he would say when she offered an observation. Just the word, not her name, not even an acknowledgement that she had spoken. Just that word dropped like a stone, and then his back would turn. And whatever she had said would vanish from the room as if it had never existed. The staff watched. Some of them winced. Carla Rodriguez had taken to standing slightly closer to Maya during rounds. A subtle, human act of solidarity that Maya had noticed and quietly appreciated without ever saying so. On the morning of the incident, the Tuesday that would divide the history of Fort Harlow Medical Center into a before and an after, Maya had been on shift for 3 hours. It had been a standard morning. 2 post-surgical checks, 1 intake assessment, a dressing change on a sergeant from the 3rd Marines who was healing from shrapnel wounds and who had spent the entire procedure telling Maya bad jokes in a hoarse, grateful voice while she worked. His name was Kellerman. She had laughed at exactly the right moments, and he had told her she was the best nurse in the building, and she had told him to drink more water, and he had saluted her with his good arm when she left. At 10:47, the ambulance bay doors open. Private First Class Daniel Alvarez, 22 years old, attached to the 2nd Battalion at Fort Harlow, was brought in on a stretcher. He had collapsed during PT. The medics reported loss of consciousness, irregular pulse, significant diaphoresis. The initial read was heat exhaustion. It had been a hot, muggy morning, and the battalion had been running under load. Maya was the first nurse to reach the bay. She took one look at Alvarez and felt something shift in her gut. Not panic, something cooler and more precise than panic. Recognition. His color was wrong. Not the flushed, overheated red of heat exhaustion. There was a grayness underneath it, a particular quality to the pallor around his lips and under his eyes that she had seen before, in circumstances she could not name in this context. His breathing was shallow and rapid, but not the gasping of dehydration. There was a quality to it that she cataloged instinctively, cross-referencing it against something deep in her memory before she was even consciously aware she was doing it. "Get me a 12 lead, she said to the medic standing beside her. "Dr. Vane's been paged," the medic said. "I know. Get me the 12 lead." The medic hesitated for exactly 1 second, looking at the trainee badge on her chest. Then something in her voice resolved his hesitation, and he moved. Maya was checking Alvarez's pupils when Vane arrived. He came in fast, jacket not yet fully on, coffee still in his hand, the look of controlled irritation he wore in the mornings sitting heavy on his face. "What do we have?" he said to the medic. "Collapse during PT, sir. Possible heat." "I wasn't asking you," Vane said. Then he looked at Maya, crouching beside the stretcher. "Step back." "His presentation isn't consistent with heat exhaustion," Maya said. She didn't move. The diaphoresis pattern, the breathing quality, the color differential around his perioral area, this looks more like... "I said step back, trainee." "Sir, if we sedate him for a heat protocol without ruling out..." Vane set down his coffee on the nearest surface and looked at her with the particular, studied calm of a man who had spent years perfecting the art of controlled contempt. "Did I ask for your assessment?" "No, sir." "Have you completed your residency?" "No, sir." "Are you, in any capacity, a licensed physician in this or any other state?" The room was very quiet. 3 nurses, 2 medics, an orderly, everyone watching, nobody moving. "No, sir," Maya said. "But I am telling you that if you administer sedation to this patient right now, you are going to crash him." The silence after that statement was a different kind of silence, heavy and electric, the way the air feels before lightning. Vane picked up the chart. He reviewed it for 30 seconds. He set it down. "Prep 2 milligrams midazolam," he said to the closest nurse. Nobody moved for a moment. "Did I stutter?" Vane said. The nurse reached for the medication card. Maya stood up from her crouch beside Alvarez. She moved to the cardiac monitor and adjusted the lead placement with 2 quick, practiced movements. The readout changed. She looked at it for 4 seconds. Then she turned to Vane. "Wolf Parkinson White," she said. "Look at the delta waves." Vane looked at her. Then, almost involuntarily, his eyes went to the monitor. The room held its breath. The pattern on the screen was not ambiguous. The delta waves were there, clear and unmistakable to anyone with the training to recognize them. In a patient with WPW syndrome, administering midazolam could trigger a fatal arrhythmia. It would not calm the patient. It would kill him. The nurse with the medication in her hand stopped moving. Vane stared at the monitor for a long time. The coffee cup sat on the counter behind him. The room was so quiet that the sound of Alvarez's labored breathing was the loudest thing in it. "Call cardiology," Vane said finally. His voice was flat and carefully neutral. "Tell them we need a consult. Now." He turned and walked to the other end of the bay, his back to the room, and began writing in a chart. Maya moved to Alvarez's side and took his hand. The young Marine's eyes were half open, glassy with pain and confusion, and the particular vulnerability of a strong person who suddenly cannot help themselves. "You're going to be okay," she told him quietly. "We caught it. You're going to be fine." "What's wrong with me?" he whispered. "Your heart has an extra electrical pathway that it shouldn't have. It's been there your whole life, probably. You just didn't know it until today." "Is it bad?" "It's fixable. Cardiologist is coming. You're in the right place." Alvarez closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. "I was so embarrassed," he said, "falling out in front of my whole squad like that." "Daniel." She used his first name deliberately, quietly, the way you speak to someone who needs to feel like a person and not a patient. "You didn't fall out. Your heart sent you a message that it needed help. That's not weakness. That's your body doing its job." He almost smiled. "How do you know my name?" "It's on your chart." She adjusted the monitor lead slightly. "Also, your squad leader said it approximately 14 times when they brought you in. He's in the waiting area right now, pacing a hole in the floor." That got a real smile. "That's Sergeant Torres, he does that. I'll have someone tell him you're stable." Carla Rodriguez appeared at Maya's shoulder. She leaned in close and said, very quietly, so only Maya could hear, "That was something. What you just did." Maya glanced at her without turning her head. "I just read the monitor." "Nobody else in this room read it," Carla said, "until you made them." The cardiologist arrived 11 minutes later, reviewed the EKG, confirmed the diagnosis, and ordered Alvarez transferred to the cardiac unit for monitoring and evaluation. The young Marine left the bay on the stretcher looking pale and shaken but stable, his vitals holding. The dangerous moment passed. It was in the quiet after the transfer that Raymond Vane walked back to the center of the room. He stood with his hands in his coat pockets, and he looked at Maya with an expression she could not fully read. Because it was not one thing, it was several things layered over each other. And the one on top was the one he had chosen, and it was anger. "You countermanded a direct order," he said, "in my ER." I flagged a diagnostic concern, Maya said. You told my staff not to administer medication I had prescribed. The medication would have killed him. That is not something you are qualified to determine. Vane took a breath. His voice was very controlled. You are a trainee. You have been in this facility for 6 weeks. You do not have the authority, the credentials, or the experience to override a physician's decision in a trauma bay, regardless of the outcome. Maya looked at him steadily. Private Alvarez is alive. That is not the point. With respect, sir, I think that's exactly the point. The nurse nearest the door had stopped pretending to look at her clipboard. Carla Rodriguez was standing perfectly still by the medication cart. The orderly near the far wall had developed a sudden, intense interest in the ceiling. You're done here, Vane said, effective immediately. I'm recommending your termination to Lieutenant Colonel Hess. I want your badge on the desk by noon. The silence that followed was not the same kind of silence as before. This one had weight to it, a finality, pressing down on everyone in the room. Maya held Vane's gaze for a moment, then she nodded once. A single, unhurried acknowledgement, the way a person nods when they have been told something they already knew was coming. Fine, she said. She pulled her badge from her lanyard. She set it on the counter, not with force, not with drama, but with a precise, deliberate care, like someone placing an object down in exactly the right position before leaving a room for good. Then she picked up the lightweight jacket she had draped over the back of a chair and walked to the door. She paused for just a moment at the threshold and turned back. Not to Vane, she looked at the room, at the nurses and the medics, and the orderly who was still staring at the ceiling, and something passed across her face, something brief and complicated and human that none of them could quite name. And then she walked out. Carla Rodriguez looked at the badge on the counter. Then she looked at the door. Then she looked at Dr. Vane, who had already turned back to his chart, as if the last 5 minutes had been a minor administrative inconvenience, and not the moment he had fired the person who had just saved a 22-year-old Marine's life. You know, Carla said to no one in particular, I've been here 12 years. Nobody answered. And I have never, she continued, still to no one in particular, seen anybody do what she just did. Vane did not look up from his chart. Outside, the sky over Fort Harlow had been building all morning, the clouds thickening and darkening the way they do in late summer, when the atmosphere can't hold any more pressure. Maya walked through the main corridor with her jacket over her arm and nothing else, because she had not accumulated much in 6 weeks. She had made sure of that, the same way she made sure of many things. She did not look at the people she passed. She did not make eye contact with the security desk clerk who buzzed her through the exit. She stepped out through the main doors and felt the first cool breath of the coming storm against her face. She stood for a moment at the top of the front steps, looking out at the parking lot. A few cars, a flagpole, the road that led back to the base housing where she rented a room and kept a bag packed under the bed. The way she had kept a bag packed under every bed for the last 4 years. She breathed in. She breathed out. Private Alvarez was alive. She started down the steps. She had made it to the 3rd step when her phone vibrated in her pocket. She stopped. She looked at the screen. An unlisted number. The kind of unlisted that wasn't accidental. She answered without speaking. The voice on the other end was familiar. Low, measured, unhurried. A voice that had given her orders in rooms she was never supposed to have been in, on missions that officially had never taken place. There's a situation developing at your location, the voice said. Maya turned and looked back at the building she had just walked out of. I'm not at that location anymore, she said. I was terminated approximately 4 minutes ago. I know. I'm looking at the security footage. She was quiet for a moment. Then you saw what happened. I saw all of it. A pause. Maya, turn around. Her hand tightened slightly on the phone. How long? 20 minutes, maybe less. She looked out at the parking lot. Then she looked at the road. Then she looked back at the hospital, at the glass doors, at the flagpole with the flag beginning to lift in the first gusts of the oncoming storm. 20 minutes. Inside that building were Carla Rodriguez, who had stood beside her, Sergeant Kellerman, who had told her bad jokes with a grateful voice, Private Daniel Alvarez, newly transferred to the cardiac unit, stable but not yet safe, and 240 other patients, and nurses, and orderlies, and staff members who had done nothing to deserve what was coming. "Tell me what you know," she said. She turned around and walked back up the steps. She did not run. She never ran when it wasn't necessary, but she moved the way she had been trained to move, the way she moved when situations stopped being manageable and started being something else entirely. Efficiently, precisely, like water through a narrow channel, like someone who knew exactly how little time there was and had already decided, without drama or ceremony, what she was going to do with it. The storm was coming in fast now, the clouds low and greenish-gray, the wind bending the trees at the edge of the parking lot. The automatic doors slid open as she reached the top step, and the air conditioning of the hospital lobby hit her face like a quiet, climate-controlled sigh, oblivious to what she now knew was bearing down on it. She walked past the security desk, past the corridor to the ER, past the door to radiology. She was calculating. 47 rooms on this floor, 12 exits, 4 of which could be secured from the inside. The pharmacy was on the second floor, which was a problem. The generator room was accessible from the basement, which was relevant. The trauma bay had its own external entrance, which was the most likely point of ingress. She already knew this building better than anyone in it realized. She had made sure of that too. She found a supply closet at the end of the east corridor, the one she had quietly noted on her third day, the one that wasn't on the official floor plan because it had been added during a 2019 renovation and the paperwork had never been properly updated. She used a technique she had learned in a place she was not going to think about right now to open the lock without a key, stepped inside, and pulled the door shut behind her. In the darkness, she breathed slowly and steadily and reviewed everything she knew. 20 minutes, the voice had said. Maya Vance had worked with less. Outside, the first crack of thunder rolled across Fort Harlow, and the rain began. The supply closet was 4 feet wide and 8 feet deep, and smelled like industrial bleach and old cardboard. And Maya had been in worse places. She had been in places so much worse that this felt almost comfortable. She crouched in the dark, phone pressed to her ear, and listened. The voice on the other end belonged to a man named Cole. She did not know his last name. She was not sure it was his real first name either. What she knew was that Cole had never been wrong about a situation developing. Not once in the 4 years she had worked alongside him in capacities that had no official names and left no official records. "Talk to me," she said. 3 vehicles, Cole said. 2 black SUVs and a utility van. They've been sitting on the access road off Route 9 for the last 40 minutes. Our contact inside the base picked up radio chatter about 20 minutes ago. Coded, but not coded well enough. What do they want? The same thing they've wanted for 6 weeks. A pause. You. Maya was quiet for 3 full seconds. "That's why you placed me here. That's why we placed you here," Cole confirmed. "We needed them to find you. We needed them to move. They've been sitting on their hands for 8 months, and we needed them to commit." "You used the hospital," she said. Her voice didn't change. "You used 240 patients. We have people in position on the perimeter. This was always going to be a controlled..." Cole. Just his name. But the way she said it stopped him mid-sentence. "How many of your people are inside this building right now?" The pause was half a second too long. "None," he said. "There was a complication with the insertion window. The team is 6 minutes out." 6 minutes, she repeated. "Maya," she ended the call. She sat in the dark for exactly 4 seconds. 4 seconds was what she allowed herself. It was a rule she had made a long time ago, in a different life, under different circumstances. 4 seconds to feel whatever needed to be felt. The anger, the betrayal, the cold, clean understanding of exactly how badly she had been used. And then the 4 seconds were over, and what was left was just the work. She stood up, 10:59 a.m. The first thing she needed was information, not the kind Cole could give her, the kind you could only get by moving through a building with your eyes open and your mouth shut. She had been doing that for 6 weeks, quietly, methodically, the same way she had been trained to operate in environments where the mission parameters weren't fully disclosed. She knew this hospital. She had made sure of it. She opened the supply closet door and stepped into the corridor. Carla Rodriguez was walking toward her. They both stopped. Carla looked at her for a moment. Then she looked at the supply closet. Then she looked back at Maya. "You came back," Carla said. "I forgot something," Maya said. Carla's eyes narrowed. She was a 12-year ER veteran who had seen people lie under pressure more times than she could count, and she knew exactly what a person looked like when they were telling a truth that was also not the whole truth. She crossed her arms. "What did you forget?" "Carla," Maya lowered her voice, "how many people are on this floor right now?" The question shifted something in Carla's expression. The suspicion didn't leave, but something else came in behind it. The particular alertness of someone who has spent years trusting their gut in emergencies and is feeling their gut move right now. "Day shift full rotation," Carla said slowly. 37 staff, plus patients, plus the guys in the waiting area. Torres and 2 other Marines from Alvarez's unit. They're still waiting on an update. "Where's Vane?" "His office. He went up there after you left, probably drafting your termination paperwork." "I need you to listen to me carefully," Maya said, "and I need you to not ask me questions right now. Can you do that?" Carla looked at her for a long moment. "That depends heavily on what you're about to say. I need you to move as many patients as you can into the interior rooms, away from the exterior walls, quietly. Don't use the PA system. Tell the staff there's a weather emergency. The storm is bad enough that it'll hold for about 4 minutes before someone checks." Carla didn't move. "Maya, what is happening?" "4 minutes," Maya said. "Please." Something in Carla's face changed. It was not blind trust. Carla Rodriguez did not do blind trust. It was the specific, experienced decision of a woman who had spent 12 years reading situations and people. And what she was reading right now, in Maya Vance's eyes, was not panic, was not confusion, was not the behavior of someone who was lost. What she was reading was the behavior of someone who knew exactly what was coming and was already 3 steps ahead of it. 4 minutes, Carla said. She turned and walked quickly back toward the main nursing station. Maya moved in the other direction. 11:02 a.m. She took the east stairwell to the 2nd floor, moving fast but not running, her footsteps controlled and quiet on the stairs. The 2nd floor housed the pharmacy, the supply depot, and 4 long-term recovery rooms. She needed 2 things from the pharmacy, and she needed them in the next 90 seconds. The pharmacist on duty was a young man named Wei, who had been at Fort Harlow for 8 months, and who had the nervous, conscientious energy of someone who took his job extremely seriously. He looked up when Maya came through the door. "You're the nurse they just," he started. "I know," Maya said. "I need ketamine, 10 milligrams in a draw-up syringe, and I need a field-grade tourniquet from the trauma supply rack. Right now." Wei blinked. "I can't dispense to someone who's been..." "Wei." She leaned forward on the counter. Her voice was very calm and very direct. "In approximately 3 minutes, this building is going to become a very dangerous place. I am trying to prevent as many people as possible from getting hurt. I need those 2 things. I will sign for them. I will take full responsibility, but I need them right now." Wei stared at her. His hand moved to the phone. Then it stopped. He looked at her face. He looked at the door. He looked back at her face. He went to the supply rack. I'm logging this, he said, pulling the tourniquet. Log everything, Maya said. Every detail, date and timestamp it. He handed her the items. She was already moving before he finished. 11:04 a.m. She heard Torres before she saw him. The sergeant's voice carried from the first-floor waiting area with the particular caring quality of a man built for open spaces and not interested in being told to sit down and be patient. She went down the stairs and turned into the corridor that led to the waiting area and almost walked into him head-on. Torres was 6'2", built like a defensive lineman, with a shaved head and hands that looked like they had been designed for a different era. He was pacing, as advertised. Behind him, two younger Marines, corporals by their bearing, sat in the plastic chairs in the rigid, watchful way of people who had been trained to never fully relax in unfamiliar environments. Torres saw her and stopped pacing. "You're the nurse from the ER," he said, "the one who figured out what was wrong with Alvarez." "How is he?" one of the corporals said, standing up immediately. "Stable," Maya said. "He's in the cardiac unit. He's going to need a procedure, but he's stable right now." She looked at Torres. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer me straight." Torres crossed his arms. "Go ahead. Are you armed?" The silence that followed lasted about 2 seconds. Torres and the two corporals exchanged exactly one glance, the kind of glance that communicates entire conversations in under a second. "We're on a medical base," Torres said carefully. "Sidearms are—" "Sergeant," she lowered her voice, "I am not hospital administration. I am not base security. I am asking you as one person to another because the answer matters. Are you armed?" Torres looked at her for a long, measuring moment. Then he uncrossed his arms. "Two of us are," he said. "Standard issue. We came in from the range." Maya nodded. She checked her watch. "In approximately 90 seconds, I need you to do something that is going to seem like it came from nowhere. I need you to move your men away from the exterior windows, and I need you to be ready." "Ready for what?" Torres said. The answer to that question arrived before she could give it. The sound was not what most people expected. Most people who had never been near a forced entry expected something dramatic. An explosion, a crash, a cinematic breach. What it actually sounded like at first was a car door. A series of car doors. Then voices. Then the particular flat percussion of a door being hit hard from outside. Then the alarm. The emergency alarm was not the fire alarm. It was a different tone, lower and more insistent, the kind that vibrated in your chest rather than your ears. And it had never been triggered in the 14 years since Fort Harlow Medical Center had installed it. Every head in the waiting room turned toward the main corridor. "Now," Maya said. Torres was already moving. He said one word to his corporals, one word, sharp and clean, and they were up and moving before the echo of the alarm had cleared the room. 11:05 a.m. The first gunman came through the ambulance bay doors. He was dressed in civilian clothes, dark jacket, dark pants, moving with the economical purpose of someone with training. Behind him, two more, then a fourth. They moved in a pattern, sweeping left-right, covering angles, not the chaotic storm-in of amateurs, but the deliberate, practiced movement of people who had done this kind of thing before. The medic who had been standing in the ambulance bay, a 24-year-old kid named Frazier, who had been eating a sandwich, dropped it and ran. The first gunman let him go. They weren't here for medics. In the ER, someone screamed, then more screaming, then the controlled chaos of people trying to process what their eyes were telling them. Carla Rodriguez, who had spent the last 4 minutes quietly moving patients with the brisk efficiency of someone running a fire drill, heard the alarm and made a decision she would tell her children about for the rest of her life. She moved to the medication room, locked the door from the inside, pressed her back against the wall, and pulled out her phone. She did not call 911. She called the base security direct line because she had been at Fort Harlow for 12 years, and she knew that was 45 seconds faster. Fort Harlow Medical Center, she said when they picked up. Active shooter, ambulance bay entrance. I need armed response right now. In Dr. Vane's second-floor office, Raymond Vane heard the alarm and sat very still at his desk for approximately 6 seconds. Then he heard the screaming from downstairs. He got up and moved to his office door and opened it a crack and looked down the corridor. And what he saw, two figures with weapons moving at the end of the hall, made him close and lock the door and back away from it until the edge of his desk hit him in the legs, and he sat down hard in his chair. In the waiting area, Sergeant Torres had his sidearm out. He had the two corporals positioned behind the reception desk and the counter by the door, using the angles the way you used angles in a building when you knew what you were doing. He was looking at Maya. "Tell me what we're dealing with," he said. His voice was flat and professional. The pacing was gone. This was a completely different man than the one who had been wearing a hole in the carpet 60 seconds ago. 4 confirmed, possibly more outside, Maya said. They came in through the ambulance bay, which means they have floor plan information. They know where the most direct route to the upper floors is. She was thinking out loud quickly. They're not here to hurt patients. If they were, they would have started already. They're looking for something specific. Torres processed this in about half a second. "You," he said. It was not a question. Maya didn't answer it. "The main stairwell is going to be compromised in about 40 seconds. I need you to hold this position. Do not engage unless they come to you. Let base security do their job." "And what are you going to do?" Torres said. She was already moving. 11:06 a.m. The east corridor was empty. The staff had done what Carla had told them to do, mostly, which meant the patients were as protected as they could be given the circumstances, which meant the only people in the open right now were the people with weapons and Maya. She moved along the wall, low and fast, the ketamine draw up in her left hand, the tourniquet in her right, her mind running through the building the way it had been trained to run through spaces. Access points, choke points, lines of sight, the specific geometry of a place under threat. She heard them before she reached the ER corridor junction. 2 of them. Moving deliberately, checking rooms, not rushing. Professionals, which meant they had a communications protocol, which meant they were reporting positions, which meant there was a coordinator somewhere, probably still outside, which was relevant. Maya stopped at the junction corner. She listened. Footsteps, 2 sets, moving in sequence, one covering while the other moved, leapfrog pattern, textbook. These were not amateurs who had watched too many movies. These were people who had been trained. She knew how to handle trained people. She had trained alongside trained people and against trained people, and she had been trained to be the person that trained people didn't see coming. Because the best advantage in any engagement was the one the other side didn't know you had. She turned the corner. The first gunman saw her at the same moment she saw him. She watched his eyes do the instant calculation that trained eyes do. Threat assessment, weapon check, identity categorization. He saw a woman in nursing scrubs. His assessment took 1 second longer than it should have. That was the second she needed. She moved inside his weapon arm, close, too close for the gun to be useful, and the ketamine hit his neck before his training caught up with his surprise. Not a killing move, a silencing move. Clean, precise, exactly the right amount. He went down slowly, and she guided him to the floor with a hand behind his head, because the noise of a falling body was something she could not afford right now. The second gunman spun at the sound of movement. He was faster than the first. He had his weapon up and his voice already opening to call out an alert. The door to room 4 opened. Sergeant Kellerman, the Marine with the shrapnel wounds, the one who had told bad jokes while she changed his dressings, stepped through it. He moved with a particular, unhesitating instinct of a combat veteran who hears a situation developing outside his door and makes a decision. He had his IV pole in one hand and the expression of a man who was not currently interested in being reminded he was a patient. The gunman's attention split for the critical half-second. Maya moved. It was not elegant. Real things rarely were. It was fast and economical and effective, and the gunman went down, and Kellerman looked at the two people on the floor, and then at Maya. And then he said with magnificent composure, "I thought you got fired." "I did," Maya said. "Huh," Kellerman said. "Go back in your room and lock the door," she said. "I could, Sergeant Kellerman." She looked at him directly. "You are post-op with a wound that is 12 days old. You are not cleared for this. Get back in your room, lock the door, get on the floor, and call base security from the room phone. Tell them 2 tangos are down in the east corridor." Kellerman looked at her for a long moment with the expression of a man genuinely wrestling with a decision. Then his military training made the decision for him, because his military training recognized authority even when it arrived in nursing scrubs. And something in Maya's voice was a kind of authority he understood in his bones. "Yes, ma'am," he said, and went back through the door. 11:08 a.m. 2 down, 2 more somewhere in the building, at minimum, plus whoever was coordinating from outside. Maya moved toward the stairwell, pulling information from the sounds around her. The alarm still running, low and insistent, someone crying from behind a closed door, the particular silence of rooms where people were hiding and trying to breathe quietly. She moved through the hallway and up the first 4 steps of the east stairwell and stopped. Voices above her. 1 floor up. 2 voices speaking low and fast. The coordinator had come inside after all. She could hear the tension in the cadences. They had gone radio silent on the first 2, and they knew something had gone wrong, which meant they were moving faster now, abandoning the methodical approach, which made them more dangerous and also less controlled. She pressed against the stairwell wall and listened. Not responding. Either they got her or, "She's in here. She has to be. The car never left." Vane said she walked out. Vane is a coward who locked himself in his office. She came back. "She's here." A pause. Then the voice she had not heard before. Older, harder, with an accent she could not quite place. The coordinator. "Find the doctor," the coordinator said. "He's the leverage. Bring him down." Maya felt something shift in her chest. Not fear, something colder than fear. The particular clarity that came when a situation stopped being about tactics and started being about a specific person in a specific room who had no idea he was about to become a bargaining chip. Raymond Vane, locked in his office on the 2nd floor, who had fired her 4 hours ago, who had grabbed her wrist and called her nothing, and dismissed her diagnosis, and nearly killed a 22-year-old Marine, and then sent her out into a storm without a second thought. Raymond Vane was about to become the specific problem she needed to solve right now. She took the stairs 2 at a time. 11:09 a.m. She reached the 2nd floor landing and looked down the corridor, empty. The coordinator and the other gunman had gone right toward the administrative wing. Vane's office was the 3rd door on the left. She went left. She reached his door in 6 seconds and knocked twice, fast. Then once, slow. A specific pattern. The kind of pattern you establish with someone before things went wrong, so they would know who was on the other side. Vane didn't know the pattern, but she had to try something. "Dr. Vane," she said, quiet and direct, mouth close to the door gap. "It's Vance. Open the door." Nothing. "I know you're in there. I know you're scared. I need you to open this door right now because in approximately 60 seconds, there are going to be armed men in this corridor, and you are the person they are coming for." Silence. Then barely audible. "How do I know you're not with them?" The question was almost funny. "Because if I was with them," she said, "I would not be knocking." A long pause. The sound of a chair scraping. Footsteps. The lock turning. The door opened 3 inches and one eye looked out at her. Raymond Vane's eye. And it contained an emotion she had never seen in it before. Not arrogance, not contempt, not the carefully constructed superiority he carried like a shield. What was in that eye right now was raw, unmediated terror. "They're going to come here," she said. "Is there another way out of this office?" "The window. Second floor. No." She thought fast. "Your private restroom. Does it connect to anything?" "The service corridor. There's a door in the back of the—" He stopped. He was staring at her. "You came back," he said. "I fired you and you came back." "Yes," she said. "We can talk about that later. Open the door all the way." He opened it. She went in, moved immediately to the window, and looked out without showing herself. She could see the two black SUVs on the access road, and a third vehicle she hadn't been told about, and two figures standing outside maintaining perimeter, which meant the coordinator had come in with fewer people than he'd posted outside, which was a mistake, and she filed that information away. "This service corridor," she said, "where does it come out?" "Laundry room, ground floor." "Anyone in the laundry room?" "Not on day shift, not until—" Voices in the corridor, close, moving fast. Maya turned to Vane. He had gone very still, the way people went still when their body understood something that their mind was still catching up to. She looked at him for one full second. This man who had grabbed her wrist and called her nothing and fired her and nearly killed a patient with his pride. And she made a decision. "Listen to me," she said. "I'm going to get you out of this building, but I need you to do exactly what I say, when I say it, without any commentary. Can you do that?" Vane swallowed. His hands were shaking slightly. He nodded. "Say it," she said. Not unkind, just clear. She needed him to hear himself say it. "Yes," he said. "I'll do what you say." "Good." She moved to the restroom door at the back of the office. "Go. Now. Don't stop." He went. She followed him in, pulled the office door closed behind her, and felt the vibration of the corridor door opening on the other side of the wall as the coordinator and his remaining man entered the office behind them. 6 seconds. That was all the distance between them and the men on the other side of that wall. 6 seconds, and a locked door, and a service corridor that smelled like clean laundry and old pipes, and Raymond Vane's ragged breathing in the dark ahead of her. She put her hand on his shoulder from behind, not rough, just a guide, just a contact that said, "I'm here, keep moving," and they went down together into the dark. 11:11 a.m. Outside Fort Harlow Medical Center, the first military police vehicles were turning off Route 9 onto the access road, lights cutting through the rain, and somewhere above the building, a helicopter was making its approach. And in the laundry room at the ground floor of the East Wing, a locked service door was about to open from the inside. None of the men outside were watching that door. They were watching the main entrance. They were watching the ambulance bay. They were watching the angles they had planned for, the approaches they had prepared for, the scenarios they had trained to handle. They were not watching for a disgraced rookie nurse and the doctor who had fired her to come out of the laundry room. Nobody ever watched for that. The laundry room door opened 6 inches, and Maya stopped, one hand flat against Vane's chest, holding him in place. He obeyed without a word. Whatever Raymond Vane had been before the last 15 minutes, he was not that man right now. Right now, he was just a frightened person in a dark corridor, doing exactly what someone calmer and more capable than him said to do. And somewhere deep beneath the fear, he was aware, in a way he could not yet fully process, of exactly how ironic that was. Maya looked through the 6-inch gap. Rain, parking lot. The 2 perimeter men were still in position, backs to the laundry exit, attention forward toward the main entrance, where the first MP vehicles were pulling in with their lights going. The rain was heavier now, cutting visibility, and that was useful. "When I move, you stay directly behind me," she said quietly. "You do not stop. You do not speak. If I tell you to get down, you get down before the sentence is finished. Understood?" "Understood," Vane said. His voice was barely above a whisper. She opened the door, and they moved. 11:13 a.m. They crossed the 15 feet of open ground in the rain at a controlled walk, not running because running drew eyes, and reached the corner of the building's east exterior wall. Maya pressed them both against it and watched the two perimeter men. Neither had turned. The MP vehicles were commanding every bit of attention at the front of the building, and that was exactly what she needed. She pulled out her phone. 1 bar. She typed a text to the number Cole had called from and sent it. 2 outside east wall, facing north. Then she put the phone away and looked at Vane. He was soaked. His white coat was plastered to his arms, his hair flat against his forehead, and he was shaking. From cold, from fear, from the accumulated shock of the last 8 minutes, doing what it did to a person's nervous system. He was looking at her with an expression she had never seen directed at her from this man. It was not gratitude yet. It was something that came before gratitude, the stage where you began to understand that your entire previous assessment of a situation was wrong. "You're going to be okay," she said. He almost laughed. It came out strangled. "You said that to Alvarez." "I meant it both times." She looked around the corner. "There's a drainage alcove 20 feet north, deep enough to put you in cover. I need you to get there and stay there until the MPs reach this side of the building." "What about you?" "I'm going back inside." Vane grabbed her arm, not the way he had grabbed her wrist in the ER, not with contempt, not with the casual violence of a man asserting dominance. This was the grip of someone holding on because they were genuinely afraid of what happened if they let go. "You can't go back in there alone," he said. "I've been in there alone for the last 8 minutes, she said. "That's Maya." He stopped. It was the first time he had used her name. Not trainee, not you, her name. And the way he said it, halting, almost bewildered, like he was learning the shape of it for the first time, made something in the air between them shift. "I'm sorry. For this morning, for everything this morning." She looked at him, this man who had called her nothing, who had fired her, who had nearly killed a patient with his pride and sent her out into the rain, and then locked himself in his office while armed men walked into his building. "Tell me that again in about 40 minutes, she said. "When this is over, I'll want to hear it then." She put his hand off her arm, not unkindly. "Drainage alcove. Go." He went. She turned back toward the building. 11:14 a.m. She came back in through the laundry room door and stopped in the corridor to take stock. The alarm was still running. She could hear shouting from the direction of the main entrance. Military police, by the cadence, establishing command presence outside. Inside, the coordinator and his remaining man were still unaccounted for. 2 down in the east corridor, 2 neutralized, and that left at least the coordinator and 1 more inside. And she could not be certain there wasn't a 5th she hadn't tracked. She moved toward the stairwell. She needed high ground. She needed to understand where they were before they understood where she was, and that meant getting above them. She reached the stairwell door and pushed it open and came face to face with Sergeant Torres. They both stopped. Torres had his weapon up and then immediately down when he identified her, with the practiced snap of a man whose trigger discipline was not a thing he thought about, but a thing he simply was. "I've been looking for you," Torres said. "Why aren't you with your men?" "My men are holding the waiting area. I came to find you because the MPs are outside, and they're requesting someone with building knowledge to communicate entry points. And I was told you know this building better than anyone." She moved past him into the stairwell. "Then stay close." "Where are we going?" "2nd floor. The coordinator is still up there, and he knows his extraction is compromised. That makes him more dangerous than he was 10 minutes ago." Torres followed her up the stairs without another question. She could hear him behind her, steady, controlled breathing, footsteps disciplined on the stairs. He was good. She registered that with the part of her that was always cataloging, always assessing. "How many were there total?" he said, keeping his voice low. "Minimum 5. 2 are down in East Corridor, sedated. 2 were taken at the laundry exit. The MPs outside should have them by now if they move fast enough. She paused at the second-floor landing door and listened. That leaves the coordinator. One man, one very specific man, Maya said, who came in here personally instead of sending someone, which tells you how important the objective was to him. Torres processed that for a half second. What was the objective? She looked at him. Me. The silence that followed was about 2 seconds long. You want to explain that? Torres said. Not right now, she said. She pushed the door open. 11:16 a.m. The second-floor corridor was empty. Vane's office door was open. The coordinator had gone in and found nothing and moved. She tracked the logic of it. The coordinator had come for her, had expected her to be somewhere in this building, had lost contact with 4 of his people, and was now in an increasingly hostile environment with the exterior being locked down by MPs. His calculus had shifted from extraction to escape, which meant he would be moving toward exits, which meant the service corridor behind Vane's restroom was actually where he was heading. She had come out that way. He would go in. She started moving fast. South End, she said to Torres. Service corridor access. He's going to try the laundry exit. They moved down the corridor at speed, past Vane's open office, past the closed doors of the recovery rooms. At the end of the hall, the door to the administrative supply room was slightly ajar, not the way it had been 10 minutes ago when she had come through this area. She stopped and put one hand out to halt Torres without looking back. He stopped immediately. She looked at the ajar door. She looked at the corridor ahead. Then she turned and mouthed to Torres, "Behind us." Torres's eyes went to the door. His weapon came up. The coordinator came through it fast, not bursting, not dramatic, fast and controlled, and already moving at an angle that told her he had been listening to their footsteps from inside that room and had timed his exit for the moment they passed. He was good. He was very good. He had a weapon up and he had it pointed at Torres, not at Maya, because Torres was the one with the visible weapon, and that was the threat you addressed first. Gun down, the coordinator said. Now, Torres held his position. His weapon was up and aimed back, and his face had the flat, focused calm of someone who had been in situations like this before and was not going to do anything rash. You're surrounded, Torres said. MPs are outside every exit. Then we have a problem, the coordinator said. His eyes moved to Maya. They stayed there. You, he said, not with surprise, with recognition. You look different. Maya looked at him. She felt the specific, cold stillness that she always felt when a situation reached its critical point. The stillness that other people sometimes mistook for fearlessness, but was actually something more precise. It was the complete absence of wasted energy. Everything that was not relevant to the next 30 seconds was set aside. Only the geometry of the moment remained. I know you, she said. It was not a question. Budapest, he said. 2019. You don't remember me, but I remember you. His weapon didn't move from Torres. You ended my partner's career. You ended a lot of things. Budapest was a sanctioned operation, she said. Your partner was in a location he wasn't authorized to be in. He was my brother, the coordinator said. The corridor was very quiet. Torres didn't move. Maya didn't move. The coordinator's weapon stayed level at Torres, but his eyes stayed on Maya, and that divide of attention was a fact she was filing away with everything else. Put the gun down, she said, not because she thought he would, but because she needed him talking, needed him present in the conversation, and not in the tactical calculation, needed 2 more seconds. I didn't come here to hurt anyone in this building, the coordinator said. I came for you. I know. Then come with me and nobody else gets hurt. The MPs are outside, Maya said. Your vehicles are compromised. Your people are down. There is no version of this where you leave this building with me. Then there's a version where I shoot the sergeant and we have a different conversation. Torres's jaw tightened. He didn't flinch. She noticed that and noted it. "Put it down," Torres said. His voice was even, not aggressive, just completely professionally even. "I'm not telling you again." Maya looked at the coordinator. She looked at his hands. She looked at his eyes. She had been trained to read the specific shift that happened in a person's body in the half second before they pulled a trigger. The tension in the shoulder, the change in the grip, the particular focusing of the eyes that was different from the focusing of someone who was thinking. She had been trained to recognize it, and she was watching for it with everything she had. She saw it. She moved left, not toward him, diagonal, toward the wall, changing his angle. At the exact moment she said Torres's name, Torres went right. The shot went between them. In the ringing silence after the gunshot, all three of them reset their positions in the space of about 1 second. Torres had his back against the wall. The coordinator had tracked right with his weapon. Maya was inside his arm. What happened next was not something she thought about. It was trained response, layered so deep it lived below conscious decision-making, assembled over years in places she was not going to name right now, in this corridor, in this hospital. It was fast, and it was controlled, and it was exactly proportionate to what the situation required. And when it was over, the coordinator was on the floor with his weapon 3 feet away from him and his hands behind his back, and Torres was on top of him with a knee in his back and zip ties that the sergeant apparently carried on his person because he was a man who thought ahead. The coordinator didn't struggle. He looked up at Maya from the floor with his cheek pressed against the linoleum, and the expression on his face was complex. Anger and grief and a strange, involuntary respect all tangled together. "Budapest," he said again. Just the word. "I'm sorry about your brother," Maya said. And she meant it, not as a tactic, not as a deflection. She meant it the way she meant things, specifically, honestly, without excess. She picked up his weapon, cleared it, and set it on top of the supply room cabinet. Torres looked up at her from his position on the floor over the coordinator. His expression was something she had not seen from him before. Not the commanding, pacing sergeant from the waiting room, not the disciplined soldier from the corridor. This was something rawer and more personal. "Budapest," he said. "Not a conversation for right now," Maya said. She pulled out her phone and called the base security line. 11:21 a.m. The MPs came through the east stairwell door 4 minutes later. 4 of them, fully equipped, moving with the organized purpose of people who had been given a specific location and a specific situation. They found Torres with the coordinator secured on the floor, and Maya standing against the wall with her hands visible, and her phone in one hand, and a completely neutral expression on her face. The lead MP, a staff sergeant named Okafor, who had been at Fort Harlow for 6 years and had never responded to an active shooter call in the building before, swept the corridor, confirmed the threat was down, and then looked at Maya. "You the nurse?" he said. "I was," she said. "As of about 10:30 this morning, I'm apparently unemployed." Okafor looked at the coordinator on the floor. He looked at Torres. He looked back at Maya. "We've got 2 down in the east corridor on the first floor," she said. "Sedated, not dead. They'll need medical attention when the ketamine wears off, which should be in approximately 20 minutes. There are 2 more outside at the laundry exit on the east wall who should be in MP custody already. That's all 5. Okafor stared at her. "All 5, he repeated. "I believe so. I'd do a full sweep to confirm." He called it in. His radio crackled with acknowledgments. He looked at her one more time with the expression of a man trying to reconcile what he was seeing with what it implied. And then he got back to work because that was what professionals did. Torres stood up. He rolled his shoulder, the right one, the one he'd braced against the wall when the shot went off. He looked at Maya. "You're going to tell me," he said, "at some point, all of it." "Buy me a coffee when this is over," she said. "I'll buy you the whole pot," Torres said. 11:26 a.m. She found Carla Rodriguez still in the locked medication room on the first floor, sitting on the floor against the wall with her phone in her hand and her back straight and her face composed in the particular way of a person who had been frightened and had decided, consciously and deliberately, not to let the fear make any decisions. Maya knocked twice, once, the same pattern she had used on Vane's door. "Carla, it's Maya. It's clear." A pause, then the sound of the lock. The door opened and Carla came out and looked at the corridor, at the two sedated men still on the floor, at the MP now standing guard at the east entrance, at the rain coming in through the still open ambulance bay doors, and then at Maya. "You came back," Carla said, for the second time that morning, but this time it meant something completely different. "I came back," Maya said. Carla looked at her for a long moment. Her eyes were very bright, in the way eyes got bright when someone was carrying something large and refusing to put it down yet. "Are you going to tell me who you are?" Carla said. "I'm a nurse," Maya said. "Maya." "I'm a nurse," she said again, softer this time, like it was a thing she was reminding herself of as much as answering the question. "Right now I'm a nurse, and there are patients in this building who have been through a terrifying experience, and they need to see someone calm and familiar walk through their door." She picked up a monitoring tablet from the nursing station counter where it had been abandoned during the evacuation. "I'm starting with Alvarez. He should not have heard any of this from the cardiac unit." Carla wiped her eyes with the back of one hand, quickly, businesslike, and then straightened up and took the tablet from Maya's hands and handed her a different one. "This one has the current floor rotation," Carla said. "I updated it when I was moving people." She paused. "Kellerman is asking for you. Apparently he feels he rendered valuable assistance and would like recognition." Maya almost smiled. "I'll add it to his chart." 11:31 a.m. Sergeant Kellerman's door was closed. Maya knocked and pushed it open and found him sitting up in his bed, with the particular expression of a man who had been told by multiple people to stay put and was operating purely on the goodwill of his self-discipline. "There she is," he said. "Here I am," Maya said. She pulled up his vitals on the tablet. "How's your wound?" "Wound is fine. How's the building?" "Clear." "How many?" "5. He studied her face. "And you?" She looked up from the tablet. "Slightly wet." Kellerman looked at the tablet in her hands, then at her scrubs, then at the doorway behind her, where he could hear the controlled bustle of MPs and staff beginning to move through the restored building. Then back at her. "You know," he said, "I've been around a lot of people who are good at dangerous things. Done some dangerous things myself." He paused. "What you are, I don't have a word for it, but it's not nurse." "I'm a nurse," Maya said, for the third time that morning. "You're also something else." She checked his wound dressing. It was intact. His vitals were good. The exertion of stepping into that corridor hadn't done the damage she'd feared. "You're going to be fine," she said. "Drink more water." "You always say that." "Because it's always true." She made a note in his chart. "Sergeant Kellerman, what you did, stepping out of that room, that was brave." He shrugged with his good shoulder. "Heard someone in trouble." "I know." She looked at him directly. "Don't do it again." He grinned. "No promises." 11:38 a.m. She was in the corridor outside the cardiac unit when the elevator opened and Raymond Vane stepped out. He was still soaked from the rain, his white coat dark with water, his hair flattened, his face carrying the particular paleness of a man who had spent time in a drainage alcove in a storm, thinking about the last several hours of his life. He saw her immediately and stopped walking. They looked at each other across about 15 feet of hospital corridor, the sounds of the building reassembling itself around them, doors opening, voices returning, the mechanical normalcy of monitors and carts, and footsteps coming back online the way a body recovered from shock, system by system, slowly and imperfectly. Vane walked toward her. He stopped about 3 feet away. He put his hands in his coat pockets. He looked at the floor, and then at the wall, and then finally at her, with the particular difficulty of a man who had spent his entire adult life in a position of unchallenged authority and was now standing in a corridor trying to do something he had not been asked to do in so long he had almost forgotten how. "I owe you an apology," he said. "Several, but I'll start with the one from this morning." He stopped. "What I said to you, in the ER, the wrist." His jaw moved. "That was wrong. It was wrong, and I knew it was wrong when I did it, and I did it anyway because I was angry and threatened, and I took that out on you, and I'm sorry." Maya listened. She didn't help him with it. She didn't cut it short. She let him say all of it because she thought he probably needed to say all of it. "The diagnosis was right," he said. "The Alvarez call. You were right, and I was wrong, and if I had followed through—" He stopped again. "He's alive because of you." "He's alive because he collapsed near a hospital," Maya said. "I just read the monitor." Vane looked at her. "That's the second time you've said that. It's the truth." "It's a fraction of the truth," he said, "and I think you know that." He was quiet for a moment. "I'm rescinding the termination. I don't know if that means anything given what's happened this morning, but I'm rescinding it." Maya looked down at her badge. She had left it on the counter in the ER. She didn't have it anymore. "I don't have my badge," she said. Something in Vane's face moved. Not a smile, not quite, but the very first precursor of one. "I'll get you a new one," he said. "You'll need to talk to Lieutenant Colonel Hess," Maya said. "It's not your call alone." "I know," he nodded. "I'll talk to Hess." He paused. "Maya." He said her name again, still like he was learning it. "Who are you?" She looked at him for a long moment. "Right now," she said, "I'm the nurse who needs to check on her patient in the cardiac unit." She walked past him to the cardiac unit door and pushed it open. 11:42 a.m. Daniel Alvarez was awake. He was propped up in his bed with monitors running clean, steady lines beside him. A blanket pulled up to his chest, his face still pale but alert and present in a way that was different from the terrified half-consciousness of the ambulance bay. His squad, Torres and the two corporals, had been cleared by the MPs to come up, and they were arranged around his bed in the way that soldiers arrange themselves around a wounded member of their unit, which was to say they were trying very hard to look casual and completely failing. Torres was standing at the foot of the bed. He saw Maya come in, and something in his posture shifted. Alvarez saw her, and his face did something young and grateful and slightly overwhelmed. "There she is," Torres said. Exactly what Kellerman had said, in exactly the same tone. "There I am," Maya said. She went directly to the monitors. His readings were good. The cardiologist had been in, and the procedure was scheduled for the following morning. A catheter ablation, straightforward, high success rate. "I heard the alarm," Alvarez said. "What happened?" "Security situation," Maya said. "It's handled." He watched her face. "You handled it." "The MPs handled it," she said. Torres made a sound that wasn't quite a word, but communicated significant skepticism, and one of the corporals looked at the ceiling. Alvarez looked at her with the particular, searching expression of a 22-year-old who was trying to understand something that kept slipping past the edges of ordinary categories. "Sergeant Torres told me you saved my life this morning," he said. "In the ER. Your heart had an electrical problem," Maya said. "We caught it. That's medicine. He said the doctor was about to give you the wrong medication. That's a situation that was corrected. He said you wouldn't move when Dr. Vane told you to step back." Maya looked up from the monitor. Alvarez was watching her with quiet intensity. "I read the EKG," she said. Alvarez was quiet for a moment. "My dad had a heart attack when I was 12, he said. "He didn't make it. The doctor at that hospital, they missed something." He stopped. "I always wondered if someone had been paying attention." He stopped again. "I'm trying to say thank you, and I'm not very good at it." Maya looked at him. This young man, 22 years old, his whole life ahead of him, scheduled for a procedure in the morning that would fix the thing that had almost killed him, surrounded by his squad in a hospital room while rain hit the windows and the world outside rearranged itself back into order. "You don't need to say anything," she said. "I know," he said. "I'm saying it anyway." He looked at her steadily. "Thank you." She held his gaze for a moment, and something in her, something she kept packed down and sealed off with the same careful deliberateness she brought to everything else, moved. "Get some rest," she said. "The procedure is at 8 tomorrow. I'll be here." She turned to go. "Miss Vance," Alvarez said. She stopped. "Whatever you are," he said, "whatever it is you actually do, I'm glad you were here today." She didn't answer. She let his hand find hers briefly, a quick, honest, human contact, and then she walked out of the room. 11:58 a.m. She was in the corridor outside the cardiac unit, her back against the wall, eyes closed, when she heard the elevator open. She heard the footsteps before she saw the source of them. Heavy, deliberate, not fast but purposeful. The footsteps of someone who walked like they were used to the ground, making way for them. She opened her eyes. The man who came out of the elevator was in his 60s, silver-haired, in full uniform with the bearing of someone who had spent so long standing straight that the straightness had become structural. His face was weathered and controlled and deeply familiar to her in the way that a particular kind of authority was familiar when you had spent years operating inside it. He saw her and he stopped. He looked at her for a long moment. The corridor around them was quiet. The storm outside had begun to ease, the rain softening to a steady gray murmur, the kind of rain that comes after the worst has passed. "General Bishop," she said. "Vance," he said. They looked at each other across 15 feet of hospital corridor, and the weight between them was not just the weight of this morning. It was the weight of 4 years of disappearance, of a woman who had been something specific and had become something different and had not told anyone whether the difference was permanent. "You were watching," she said. Not an accusation, a statement. "We were watching," he said. "We got the report from Cole." He walked toward her, slowly. "The coordinator is in custody. His network is compromised. This operation is over." "Good," she said. "You performed," he said. Not a compliment exactly, a professional assessment. "Exactly as expected. Better, honestly." "I wasn't performing," she said. "No," he agreed, "you never were." He stopped in front of her. "There's a debriefing required, formally, you understand." "I understand." After the debriefing, he said, "there will be a conversation about reinstatement, full reinstatement, assets, access, support, the full infrastructure." He paused. "You've been out in the cold long enough, Maya. Whatever happened in Budapest, it's been assessed, and it's been—" "I know what happened in Budapest," she said. "We want you back." The corridor was very quiet. Maya looked at the door to the cardiac unit. She looked at the nurse's station at the end of the hall, where Carla Rodriguez had appeared and was watching from a professional distance, pretending to review a chart. She looked at the wet footprints her own shoes had left on the linoleum coming down the corridor. She looked back at General Bishop. "I have a patient prepping for a catheter ablation at 8 tomorrow morning," she said. "I told him I'd be here." Bishop studied her face. He was not a man who showed surprise easily, but something moved behind his eyes. "We have a helicopter waiting," he said. "I know," she said. "I can hear it." She stood up straight. She smoothed her scrubs. She looked at him with the full, clear, steady directness of someone who had made a decision. Not in that moment, but sometime earlier, maybe in the ambulance bay when she first saw Alvarez, maybe in the supply closet in the dark, maybe on the steps in the rain before Cole's call came through, maybe even earlier than all of that, in some quiet interior place where the real decisions lived long before they surfaced. "Tell the debriefing team I'll come in on Thursday," she said. "I'll cooperate fully. I'll give them everything they need. She paused. But I'm staying. Bishop looked at her for a long, measuring moment. Then he said, staying. Here, she said, in this hospital, in these scrubs. She let the word settle. I came back this morning for 240 patients who didn't do anything to deserve what walked in that door. I came back because Carla Rodriguez stood next to me for 6 weeks when nobody else did. I came back because a 22-year-old Marine with a heart condition needed someone to read his EKG. She held Bishop's gaze. I came back because this is where I'm supposed to be. The helicopter was audible above the building, rotors steady and patient, waiting. Bishop was silent for a long time, long enough that the rain filled the space between them, soft and persistent and real. Then he nodded once, a single nod, precise and unhurried, the nod of a man who had spent a lifetime giving orders and who was, in this particular moment, receiving something instead. Thursday, he said. Thursday, she confirmed. He turned and walked back toward the elevator. His footsteps were the same, heavy, deliberate, purposeful, but she thought, though she could not be certain, that there was something slightly different in them, something that had not been there before, something that might, in a man like that, have been respect. The elevator doors closed. Maya stood in the corridor for a moment. She listened to the rain. She listened to the hospital coming back to life around her. Voices, footsteps, monitors, the ordinary, persistent sounds of people being cared for and people doing the caring. She pushed open the door to the nursing station. Carla Rodriguez looked up from her chart. She had clearly given up pretending she wasn't listening. So, Carla said. So, Maya said, are you staying? Maya picked up a patient monitoring tablet from the rack. She checked the time. She looked at the patient rotation on the screen. 37 patients, 4 post-operative, 2 pre-procedure, the rest in various stages of the long, unglamorous, profoundly necessary work of recovery. I still need to check on Kellerman, she said. Carla smiled. It was a slow smile, the kind that started in the eyes, the kind that came from somewhere real. His chart's on the left, Carla said. Maya took it. She walked out of the station and down the corridor, her footsteps steady and even on the linoleum, and behind her the hospital continued its quiet, imperfect, essential work, the way it always had, the way it always would, carrying people through the worst moments of their lives, one room at a time. Kellerman's chart said he was fine. Kellerman's face said he had been waiting for her to come back and tell him that personally, and that the chart was beside the point. She pushed open his door and he was sitting up with his arms crossed, and the expression of a man who had replayed the last hour in his head approximately 16 times and arrived at several conclusions he wanted to discuss. Vitals are good, Maya said before he could speak. She pulled up his readings on the tablet. Wound is intact. You didn't tear anything when you stepped into the corridor, which is honestly more than you deserved given that you were 11 days post-op. I was helping, Kellerman said. You were a distraction, she said, a useful one, but don't do it again. He uncrossed his arms. You know what I keep thinking about? He said. I suspect you're going to tell me. That first day, when you changed my dressings, he tilted his head, you had this look when you were working, like you were somewhere else in your head. Not checked out, more like you were running a whole separate process and your hands were just executing the output. Maya set the tablet down on the bedside table. I thought it was a nurse thing, Kellerman said. Some people just focus like that, but it wasn't that, was it? She was quiet for a moment. Get some sleep, she said. I'll check on you at 1400. Maya, she stopped at the door. The guys from my unit, he said, the ones who had the bet about whether you'd last. He paused. I want you to know I didn't put money in. She looked back at him. I know, she said. You tipped me off on day 3. You said, and I'm quoting, that I was clearly too smart to get comfortable here. Kellerman's mouth opened slightly. I didn't know you heard that, I hear most things, she said. Get some sleep. She pulled his door closed behind her. 12:14 p.m. The debriefing began informally and then got very formal very fast. The conference room on the third floor had been commandeered by the time Maya arrived. Two men in civilian clothes with the specific, practiced blankness of intelligence personnel sat across a table from a base JAG officer named Captain Reyes, who looked like she hadn't slept since the previous Thursday and was not improving. Staff Sergeant Okafor sat at the end of the table with a notepad and the expression of a man who was aware he was the least important person in the room and was fine with it. General Bishop was not present. He had sent the two civilian men in his place, which told Maya something about the nature of what was coming. She sat down. The taller of the two civilian men introduced himself as Harmon. He did not introduce his colleague, who had the particular quality of stillness that suggested he was there to observe and had no intention of participating in anything as forthcoming as an introduction. Ms. Vance, Harmon said, or is it Agent Vance? It's Ms. Vance, she said, or Maya, either is fine. Harmon looked at a folder. He opened it. He read something in it for a long moment, though Maya suspected he had read it several times already, and this was a technique. You were placed at Fort Harlow Medical Center 6 weeks ago, he said. That's correct. The placement was coordinated by an asset designated Cole, operating under a program that this office does not have full clearance to review. I'm aware of the clearance structure, Maya said. The intended purpose of the placement was to draw out a foreign network that had been operating in this region for approximately 8 months. He looked up from the folder. Is that your understanding? That is my understanding as of approximately 10:59 this morning, she said. Prior to that call, I was under the impression that I had been assigned here for purposes of professional reintegration following an extended operational hiatus. Harmon blinked. It was a very small blink. You weren't informed of the actual objective. No, she said, I was not. The room was quiet for a moment. Captain Reyes wrote something in her notepad. The silent man continued to observe. That's a significant operational disclosure gap, Reyes said, without looking up. It is, Maya agreed pleasantly. Harmon closed the folder and opened it again. The coordinator taken into custody this morning has been identified as Viktor Radek, a Hungarian national with connections to a network that has been on our watch list since 2018. His stated objective was your extraction, specifically the intelligence you carry regarding Budapest, 2019. Maya nodded. Can you walk us through what you know about what happened in Budapest in 2019 that would motivate a network of this size to... I can walk you through it on Thursday, Maya said. As I told General Bishop, I'll come in, I'll cooperate fully, I'll give you everything, but I am currently on shift in a hospital that has just experienced an active security situation. I have 37 patients in rotation, and I have a preoperative patient tomorrow morning who needs consistent care. I am happy to be thorough on Thursday. Harmon looked at her. The silent man looked at her. Reyes looked up from her notepad. You're staying, Harmon said. It had the quality of a statement that was actually a question. I'm staying, Maya said. Is there anything that requires my immediate attention that cannot wait until Thursday? Harmon thought about this for a moment. Then he closed the folder entirely. The 5 individuals in custody are being transferred to federal holding this afternoon, he said. Radek will be processed under the standard protocol. You may be required to provide testimony at a later date. Fine, she said. Your operational status is currently classified as suspended pending review. Also fine, she said. I want to note, Reyes said, looking up, that from a legal standpoint, the actions taken today in this facility by Miss Vance were, given the circumstances and the absence of authorized personnel, arguably within the scope of necessary defensive force. I am not anticipating any legal complications from this office. I appreciate that, Captain, Maya said. Harmon stood. His silent colleague stood. They both looked at her one more time. the particular look of people who had spent careers categorizing other people and had encountered someone who declined to fit neatly into any available category. Thursday, Harmon said. Thursday, Maya confirmed. They left. Rhea stayed. She capped her pen and looked at Maya across the table with the expression of someone who had something personal to say and was deciding whether the context permitted it. Off the record, Rhea said. Off the record, Maya said. That was one of the most composed performances in a debrief I have ever witnessed, Rhea said. And I have been doing this for 9 years. Maya looked at her steadily. I wasn't performing, she said. Reyes smiled. It was a brief, genuine smile. That's what made it so good, she said, and closed her notepad and left. 12:47 p.m. The hospital was putting itself back together with a particular determined efficiency of an institution that had been built to absorb shock. The MPs had cleared the East Corridor. The 2 sedated men had been transported to the medical bay under armed guard. The ambulance bay doors had been closed and assessed for structural integrity by the facilities team. The nursing staff had returned to their stations and their rotations and their work. And if their movements were a little faster and their voices a little quieter than usual, that was the reasonable aftershock of a morning that none of them had trained for. Maya was finishing a post-operational wound assessment on a Marine named Gutierrez, 31 years old, knee reconstruction, 2 days out from surgery, when her phone buzzed. She finished the assessment first, noted her findings, told Gutierrez his range of motion was improving ahead of schedule, and then stepped into the corridor to check the message. It was from Cole. Just 3 words, "We need to talk." She typed back, "Thursday." His response came in 4 seconds. "It can't wait." She stared at the screen. Then she typed, "Waiting room, 10 minutes." She put the phone in her pocket and went back to the nursing station to drop off the tablet. Carla was there, cross-checking medication schedules with the calm efficiency of someone who used busyness as ballast after difficult experiences. "I need 10 minutes, Maya said. Carla didn't look up. Gutierrez's next check is at 1500. Alvarez's pre-op assessment is at 1430. You have time, she paused. But only 10. Maya looked at her. You already know my rotation schedule. I've known your rotation schedule since your 2nd week, Carla said. Somebody had to. She finally looked up. Her expression was measured and deliberate. Also, whoever that man is who called you 4 times this morning from an unlisted number, I saw the screen when you were in the supply closet bay. Don't look surprised. I wasn't following you. I was getting gloves. Whoever he is, be careful. Maya held her gaze for a moment. 10 minutes, she said. 10 minutes, Carla confirmed. 1:03 p.m. Cole was not what most people expected. He was medium height, medium build, with an unremarkable face that was specifically unremarkable in the way that took effort to achieve. He was sitting in a chair in the far corner of the waiting room, which was now empty of Torres and his corporals. They had been cleared to return to the barracks with orders to submit written statements. He was holding a cup of coffee from the vending machine as if it were a prop. Maya sat across from him. They looked at each other for a moment. They had the comfortable, complicated silence of people who had been through difficult things together and had developed a shared language of understatement. You should have told me, she said. I know, he said. You put 240 patients in. I know. He set the coffee down. It was a call made above my level, Maya. I want you to understand that. I would have told you if I'd had the authority. I didn't have the authority. Bishop? He was quiet for a moment. Higher than Bishop. She processed that. Radek had been building this operation for 8 months, Cole said. We needed him to move, and he wouldn't move unless he had confirmed intelligence on your location. We gave him the intelligence. We needed the hospital because it was a controlled environment. Access points, camera coverage, containment options. It was the most controllable placement we had. It didn't feel controlled from the inside, she said. It never does, Cole said. You know that. He looked at her steadily. You also know that the reason it worked, the reason Radek's whole network is in custody this afternoon instead of still out there, is because you were exactly what you've always been. And you did it in scrubs with a ketamine syringe. That's not a compliment, she said. That's a justification. It's both, he said. She leaned back in her chair. Outside, the rain had finally stopped, and the light coming through the waiting room windows was that particular pale gold that came after a storm, when the air was clean and everything looked slightly new. What can't wait until Thursday, she said. Cole picked up the coffee again. He turned it in his hands. He looked at it for a moment in the way people looked at things when they were deciding how to say something they knew was going to change the room. Radek has a brother, he said. Maya went still. I know, she said carefully. He mentioned Budapest. Not that brother, a different one. Third brother, younger, 28 years old. We didn't know about him until about 2 hours ago, when Radek's network started collapsing and our intercept started picking up new traffic. He set the coffee down again. His name is Andre. He's been in country for 3 weeks. We don't know where he is, he paused, but we know what he was told to do if Victor's operation failed. Maya was very still. Tell me. Clean up, Cole said. Victor's insurance policy. If he got taken down, Andre's directive was to clean up the loose ends. Cole looked at her directly. You're the loose end, Maya. The waiting room felt very quiet all of a sudden. The pale gold light, the smell of hospital coffee and industrial cleaner, the distant, ordinary sounds of the building around them. How long? She said. We don't know. He may not even know yet that Victor is in custody. Our window is probably 12 to 24 hours before he gets confirmation and moves. Cole paused. We can move you. Tonight, safe house in Virginia, full protection detail, fully resourced. No, she said. Maya, no. She said it the same way she had said it to Bishop, quietly, completely, without room for negotiation in the edges of the word. I have a patient in pre-op for an ablation at 8 tomorrow morning. Cole stared at her. An unknown asset is potentially moving toward your location in the next 12 to 24 hours. Then I'd suggest, she said, that your office use those 12 to 24 hours to find him. She met his eyes. You placed me here, Cole. You made this location. If there is a threat connected to this placement, it is your office's responsibility to neutralize it, not mine, and not at the cost of a 22-year-old Marine's preoperative care. Cole looked at her for a long time, the particular look of a man who was simultaneously frustrated and certain, and also, beneath both of those things, something that might have been admiration if he had been the kind of person who expressed that readily. I'll put assets on the building tonight, he said. External coverage, plain clothes. You won't see them. I know I won't see them, she said. That's the point. If anything changes in the threat assessment, you call me directly, she said. Not through channels. Directly. Directly, he agreed. She stood up. Cole, she paused. Alvarez, the kid with a heart condition. Did you know about him? Was he part of the setup? Cole looked up at her. Something in his face shifted. A very small shift, but she read it the way she read everything. No, he said. He was just a Marine who collapsed on the wrong morning. The right morning, she said, and she walked out of the waiting room. 1:31 p.m. She found Vane in the second-floor corridor outside his office, standing in the doorway with his arms at his sides and the particular, dislocated look of a man trying to understand how his office had become a crime scene in the course of a single shift. 2 MPs were inside, completing their documentation. The coordinator's weapon was still on top of the cabinet where she had left it, waiting to be logged into evidence. He heard her coming and turned. He had changed out of the wet coat. He looked better than he had in the drainage alcove, which was not a high bar, but he looked like himself again, or rather, a version of himself that she had not seen before, which was himself with the armor partially down. "How are you?" she said. The question surprised him. She could see it surprise him. He stopped. He started again. "I've been better." He looked at his office. "They found the chart I was drafting when the alarm went off." He paused. "Your termination paperwork." "I know. It's going to be in their report," he said. "The timing." "Yes," she said. He turned to face her fully. "The staff knows what happened in the ER this morning. What I did. All of it." He said it flatly, without self-pity, which she respected. "Carla Rodriguez has apparently been conducting what I can only describe as a comprehensive informal briefing of every person in this building." "That sounds like Carla," Maya said. "She's not wrong," Vane said. "About any of it." He was quiet for a moment. "I've been a surgeon for 26 years. I've been very good at it for most of those years. And somewhere in there, I confused being very good at the technical part with being right about everything." He looked at the floor. "That's a dangerous thing to confuse." Maya listened. She did not offer him absolution because that was not hers to give, and she thought, actually, that he did not want absolution. He wanted to say the true thing out loud to the person it most needed to be said to, and she could give him that. "You saved his life," Vane said. "The kid in cardio. And then 2 hours later, you saved mine. And somewhere between those two things, I need to figure out what kind of doctor I want to be for the rest of my career." He looked up. "That's probably more than you needed to hear." "It's fine," she said. He nodded. He looked at his office again. "I already called Hess. Your termination is formally rescinded. She wanted me to tell you directly." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a temporary badge. It had her name on it. "She had this made this morning, apparently. She told me, and I'm quoting, that she signed off on your file 6 weeks ago because she trusted her read of a person, and she has never been more correct in her life." Maya looked at the badge. "She said one other thing," Vane said. He held the badge out to her. "She said, 'Give it to her yourself and make it mean something.'" She took the badge. She looked at it for a moment, then she clipped it to her scrubs. "Thank you," she said. "Don't," he said. "Don't thank me for giving back something I had no business taking." She looked at him, and she decided that Raymond Vane, who had called her nothing and grabbed her wrist and fired her and locked himself in his office in terror, and then come out of a drainage alcove in the rain to stand in a corridor and say the hard things clearly, Raymond Vane was, underneath the armor he had spent 26 years constructing, a person who was capable of this. She had not expected that. It changed something small but real in her assessment of him. "All right," she said. "Let's go check on your patients." He blinked. "My patients?" "You're still the chief trauma surgeon," she said. "The ER is operational. Carla has been holding your rotation for 3 hours, and she is not going to keep doing it indefinitely." She started walking. "Also, you should probably get a coffee. You look like you need one." After a half-second, she heard his footsteps behind her. 2:08 p.m. She was at the nurse's station writing up her 1,400 rotation notes when Torres appeared at the end of the corridor. He was in his duty uniform now, jacket properly on, and his bearing was different from the waiting room version. Military upright, structured, purposeful. But his face carried something that the duty uniform hadn't quite covered over. He walked to the station and stopped across the counter from her. "I submitted my statement," he said. "Good," she said without looking up from her notes. "I included everything," he said. "The corridor, the shot, all of it." A pause. "I also included my assessment of your actions." She looked up. "I want you to know what I wrote," he said. "I wrote that in my professional assessment as an active duty NCO with 11 years of service, Ms. Vance's response to the threat in this facility was the most tactically sound, proportionately executed, and operationally effective defensive action I have personally witnessed in a non-combat environment." He said it straight, without inflection. the way soldiers delivered formal assessments, because he wanted her to hear it the way he had written it. I also wrote that she did it in nursing scrubs with a drug I can't pronounce, and that the people who trained her should be proud of whoever she is. Maya held his gaze. That's going to raise questions, she said. Good, he said. Someone should be asking them. Torres, she set her pen down. Alvarez is in good shape. The procedure is straightforward. He'll be in PT and full duty within 6 weeks. Torres absorbed this. The lines in his face shifted, the professional tension easing, just fractionally, just enough to show what had been underneath it. He told me what you said to him, Torres said, in the ER, about his heart sending him a message. Maya didn't respond. He called his mom, Torres said. First time in 8 months. Apparently there was a falling out after his dad died. He called her. He paused. He said it was something you told him, about the body doing its job. She looked down at her notes. I'm just passing it on, Torres said. Thank you, she said quietly. He nodded. He straightened up. He was about to go. Then he stopped. Budapest, he said. She looked at him. I'm not asking, he said. I just want you to know, whatever it is, whatever happened there, from where I'm standing, the ledger looks very different than whatever they told you it looked like. She was quiet for a long moment. You don't know what happened, she said. No, he agreed. But I know what happened in that corridor today, and I know what happened in that ER this morning. And those things tell me enough about who you are. He held her eyes. The coffee offer stands, when you're ready. He walked away. She looked at the space he had left for a moment. Then she picked up her pen and went back to her notes. 2:49 p.m. She was in the cardiac unit anteroom, reviewing Alvarez's pre-procedure files, when she felt the specific prickle at the back of her neck that she had learned, a long time ago, not to dismiss. It was not intuition exactly. It was pattern recognition operating below the level of conscious thought, assembling fragments of sensory data, a sound slightly wrong in the hallway, a reflection in the window glass, a quality of presence in a space that shouldn't have had it, into a warning. She set the file folder down carefully. She kept her eyes on the page in front of her. She did not look up. There were 2 people in this anteroom, herself and a floor nurse named Davis, who was updating medication charts at the far end of the room, back turned. The corridor outside was visible through the glass panel in the door. Ordinary traffic, 2 nurses, an orderly with a cart, and a man in a maintenance uniform who was walking too slowly. Not browsing the corridor slowly, calibrated slowly. The kind of slow that was actually a measurement of something. He was young, late 20s, medium build. He had not been in this building earlier today. She had mapped the maintenance staff on her 2nd week, and he was not on that map. He was looking at the door to Alvarez's room, not at the corridor, at Alvarez's room specifically. Andre. The thought arrived fully formed with the cold precision of a confirmed identification. Cole had said 12 to 24 hours. He had been wrong. Or Andre had gotten confirmation faster than projected. Or, and she filed this possibility away, Andre had never needed Victor's confirmation. He had been watching on his own. She stood up slowly. She needed Cole. She needed it in the next 45 seconds. She pulled out her phone under the level of the table and typed, East Wing Cardiac Unit, now, with her thumb, hit send and put the phone away, and stood up completely and walked to the door of the anteroom. She stepped into the corridor. Andre saw her. She saw him see her. The maintenance act dropped out of his posture in the space of half a second. He didn't reach for anything. He didn't move, but the quality of his stillness changed completely, from pretense to the real thing. They were 12 feet apart. She needed to not let him reach Alvarez's room. She needed to not create a scene that involved civilians in a hospital corridor. She needed 30 seconds. Can I help you? She said. Completely natural, Nurse voice. The same voice she used with families in the waiting room. He looked at her. His eyes did the same assessment the first gunman's eyes had done. Threat, weapon, identity, and arrived at the same initial conclusion. Woman in scrubs. And then, a half second later, the second conclusion, the corrected one. You're her, he said, in accented English. Young voice, not Victor's voice, younger and less controlled. I'm a nurse, she said, exactly the way she had said it 3 times already today. And this time walking toward him, with her hands visible and her pace steady, and her face holding the complete, genuine calm of someone who had already decided what happened next. She meant it in every possible sense of the word. Your brother is alive, she said. She kept walking. She was 8 feet away now. He's in federal custody. He is not hurt. If you want a chance to see him again, you are going to stop moving your right hand toward whatever is in your jacket pocket, and you are going to listen to me. He froze. His hand stopped. 6 feet. I know you didn't come here to hurt patients, she said. Victor didn't come here to hurt patients either. You came here for me. That's a different thing. 4 feet. And I am standing right in front of you. She stopped. They were face to face. He was shaking. Not the controlled tension of a trained professional, something rawer than that. He was young and frightened, and grieving something he had not fully lost yet, and could still lose if the next 30 seconds went wrong. What happened to my brother in Budapest, she said quietly, was not something I wanted. I want you to hear me say that. His jaw tightened. He's dead. Elias, she said. She used the name she had looked up a long time ago, in the aftermath, in the silence of a debrief room at 2 in the morning, when she had gone through every file connected to that operation, because she needed to understand who she had been standing across from. Elias was caught in the middle of something larger than both of you. That is a true thing. It is not enough. I know it is not enough, but it is what's true. Something moved through Andre's face. It was not resolution. It was not forgiveness. It was the specific pain of a person who had traveled a very long way, carrying something very heavy, and arrived somewhere that was not what they had expected to arrive at. The door at the end of the corridor opened. Cole came through it. 2 plainclothes agents behind him. Moving quietly, Andre heard them. He looked past Maya's shoulder. He looked back at her. If I come with you, he said, my brother, can I will personally request supervised contact, she said. I cannot guarantee it, but I will ask. She held his eyes. I'm telling you the truth. He looked at her for a long moment. Then his hand came away from his jacket, slowly, visible. Maya exhaled. Cole reached them in 4 steps. The 2 agents flanked Andre without contact, professionally, and began the quiet, efficient process of extraction. Cole looked at Maya with the expression of a man who had arrived, expecting a different scene, and was recalibrating. How? He said. Just that. Maintenance uniform, she said. He was moving wrong. Cole shook his head once, slowly. We missed him for 3 weeks. You were looking at the network, she said. He was acting alone. Cole looked at Andre being guided toward the far stairwell, then at Maya. Then he did something she had not seen him do in 4 years of working alongside him. He said simply, without qualification, I'm sorry, for this morning, for all of it. She looked at him. Thursday, she said. We'll sort it Thursday. He nodded. He followed his agents. She stood in the empty corridor for a moment. The pale afternoon light was coming through the windows now, stronger and clearer than the morning. The storm was fully gone. She could hear the building around her, the monitors, the footsteps, the low voices of staff doing the quiet, endless, necessary work. She could hear Carla's voice at the far end of the floor, brisk and warm and practical, the way Carla's voice always was. She checked her watch. 2:58 p.m. Alvarez's pre-op assessment was at 14:30. She was late. She walked to his door and knocked twice and pushed it open. He looked up from the bed. He had been talking to Torres, who was back. Apparently, the coffee offer had extended to sitting with a squad member before a procedure, and both of them looked at her when she came in. "Sorry I'm late," she said. Alvarez smiled. It was the easiest, most uncomplicated smile she had seen all day. "It's okay," he said. "I figured you were busy." She pulled up his chart. Torres looked at her over Alvarez's head with the steady, knowing eyes of a man who had spent the afternoon arriving at conclusions he was keeping, for now, to himself. She did not meet his eyes. She looked at her patient. "Let's go through the procedure," she said. "All of it, so you know exactly what to expect in the morning." "Okay," Alvarez said. "It starts at 8, she said. "I'll be here at 7:30. Any questions you have between now and then, you call the nursing station and they'll reach me. Doesn't matter what time." He nodded. "You're going to be fine," she said, and she meant it, the way she always meant it, specifically, completely, without qualification. She sat down beside his bed and opened the chart, and the afternoon light lay across the room, and outside the last of the storm clouds were moving east, and Fort Harlow Medical Center continued to do what it had always done, absorb the worst of what came through its doors and give people back to themselves, one careful, necessary day at a time. She was at the nursing station at 7:28 the next morning when Alvarez's mother walked through the main entrance. Maya saw her before anyone else did, a woman in her late 40s, small-framed, wearing a coat that was slightly too large for her, carrying a bag that had been packed in a hurry. She had Daniel's eyes, wide and dark, and containing at this particular moment the specific terror of a parent who had received a phone call about her child and had gotten on the first available thing moving in the right direction. She stopped at the front desk and said her son's name, and the way she said it, the way a name becomes a prayer when you're frightened, was something Maya heard from 40 feet away. She set down her tablet and walked to the entrance. "Mrs. Alvarez?" she said. The woman turned. "Yes, Daniel called me. He said, is he?" "He's stable," Maya said. "He slept well. His vitals this morning are exactly where we want them. The procedure is in 30 minutes and it is going to go very well." She spoke clearly and directly and without rushing it, because what a frightened parent needed was not speed, it was certainty. "My name is Maya Vance. I'm his nurse. I've been with him since yesterday morning." Mrs. Alvarez looked at her. Her eyes were wet, but she hadn't let them go yet, holding them back with the particular determination of a woman who had decided she was going to be strong for her son and had not given herself permission to stop deciding that. "He told me about you," she said. "On the phone last night. He said you didn't give up on him." Maya held her gaze. "He's easy to not give up on," she said. "Come with me. I'll take you to him before they prep him." 7:31 a.m. The reunion between Daniel Alvarez and his mother lasted 4 minutes and 40 seconds before the pre-op team needed the room. And in those 4 minutes and 40 seconds, Maya stood in the corridor outside the closed door and listened to the muffled sounds of two people who had been at a distance from each other, putting that distance down. And she thought about her own mother, briefly, in the way she sometimes allowed herself to think about things that lived in the sealed-off places, carefully, briefly, and then she put it away. Carla appeared beside her. "Pre-op team is ready," Carla said. Then she looked at the closed door, then at Maya. "You okay?" "Yes," Maya said. Carla looked at her with the particular seeing-through-it expression she had perfected over 12 years. "You slept here, didn't you?" It was not a question. "There was a situation developing," Maya said. "It made sense to stay on site." "A situation," Carla repeated. "It's handled," Maya said. Carla was quiet for a moment. "Cole's people were outside all night. I saw them when I came in at 6. 2 plainclothes in a car by the east entrance, and 1 walking the perimeter." She paused. "I've been a nurse for 12 years, Maya. I know what plainclothes coverage looks like. My brother was military police for 8 years. Maya looked at her. I'm not asking, Carla said. It was almost exactly what Torres had said. I'm telling you that I see things, and that whatever was happening last night, whoever was out there, I'm glad they were there. She paused once more. And I'm glad you were in here. The door to Alvarez's room opened. Mrs. Alvarez stepped out with red eyes and a straight spine, and the specific composed courage of a woman who had made her peace with the next 2 hours and was now simply going to endure them as gracefully as possible. Maya looked at her. He's going to be fine, she said. I'll come find you the moment he's out. Mrs. Alvarez nodded. She took Maya's hand and held it for just a moment, not shaking it, just holding it, the way you held something that meant something. And then she walked toward the family waiting area. The pre-op team went in. Maya looked at her watch. 7:34. 8:02 a.m. The procedure room was not somewhere Maya was cleared to be, and she knew it, and she went to the observation window anyway. The cardiologist, a compact, precise woman named Dr. Sang, who had been at Fort Harlow for 3 years, and who moved through a procedure the way a watchmaker moved through a mechanism, with complete economy and complete confidence, was 40 minutes into the ablation when Maya arrived at the window. She watched the monitors. She watched Sang's hands. She watched the readouts that told the story of a 22-year-old heart being asked, for the first time in its life, to give up the electrical pathway that had been silently threatening it since before its owner knew how to walk. Torres was there. He was standing 6 feet down from her at the same window, and he had clearly been there for a while. They stood in silence for a moment. You stayed last night, he said. Yes. Andre Radek, he said. She looked at him. He had his arms crossed, his eyes on the procedure room. How did you know that name? She said. I submitted a very thorough statement, he said. The JAG officer, Reyes, she reached out this morning to clarify some details. She mentioned an individual taken into custody on the cardiac floor yesterday afternoon. He paused. She didn't give me the name, but I know how to find things. Torres. I'm not going to say anything, he said. That's not why I'm telling you. He was quiet for a moment. I'm telling you because he was here for you, and Alvarez was in that room, and you stayed all night to make sure the two things didn't intersect. He uncrossed his arms. That's all I'm saying. The monitor in the procedure room showed a clean, steady rhythm. Singh made a small adjustment with a certainty that was almost casual, and the readout settled into a pattern that was different from anything Alvarez's heart had ever produced. Clean, unobstructed, the electrical signal traveling exactly the path it was supposed to travel, and no other. Maya exhaled. Torres saw it. Good news? Very good news, she said. 9:47 a.m. Alvarez came out of the procedure room awake and groggy and immediately asking for his mother, which was the best possible sign. The anesthesia was thin. Sang preferred the lightest sedation protocol that safety permitted, which Maya had noted approvingly on the pre-op chart, and he was tracking well within 20 minutes of transfer to recovery. Mrs. Alvarez was brought in. Maya stood in the doorway while mother and son found each other again across the small geography of a recovery room, and then she stepped back to give them the space that belonged to them. She almost walked into Raymond Vane. He was standing just outside the door, which surprised her because Vane did not typically appear in the cardiac recovery wing. His domain was the trauma bay and the surgical suites, the high-pressure spaces, the places where things happen fast. This was not that. This was the slow, quiet work of recovery, and it was not where she expected to see him. He had his hands in his coat pockets. His new coat, the wet one, had apparently been dealt with. He looked past her into the recovery room for a moment, at Alvarez and his mother, and something moved through his face that was private and complicated, and that he did not try to hide. How did it go? He said. Clean, Maya said. Sang is excellent. She is, he agreed. He was quiet for a moment. I want to observe your rounds today, he said. If you're willing. She looked at him. Not to supervise, he said quickly. That's not what I mean. I want to watch how you work. I want to understand what I was missing. He held her eyes. 26 years, and I think I've been doing half of this job. The technical half, he paused. I'd like to learn the other half. If you're willing to let me watch. It was possibly the most genuinely humble thing she had ever heard Raymond Vane say, and she had a strong feeling, based on what she now knew of him, that it had cost him something real to say it. 1400, she said. Start of the afternoon rotation. Don't be late. Something in his face shifted. Not quite a smile, the architecture of one. I won't be late, he said. 10:15 a.m. The Thursday debriefing had been moved to this morning. She found out when Harmon and his silent colleague appeared at the nursing station at 10:08 and asked, with the carefully calibrated politeness of people who were technically requesting but operationally expecting, whether she was available. She was in the middle of a dressing change on Gutierrez's knee. I'll be done in 12 minutes, she said, without looking up. Harmon looked at his watch. He looked at the silent man. The silent man looked at the ceiling. Harmon said, of course, and they went to wait in the conference room. She finished Gutierrez's dressing with the same care and attention she gave it every time, which was total because Gutierrez's knee was the thing that mattered in this room right now, and everything else was going to have to wait its turn. She told him his range of motion was improving ahead of projections, which was true, and that he should be looking at full mobility clearance within 3 weeks, which made him close his eyes briefly with relief in the way soldiers close their eyes when they heard news that meant they were going to be okay. She washed her hands. She noted her findings. She went to the conference room. 10:32 a.m. The debriefing lasted 2 hours and 14 minutes. She told them everything. She told them about Budapest. All of it. The parts that were in the official record and the parts that weren't. The decision she had made in a hotel corridor at 2 in the morning that had ended Elias Radek's operational career and sent his network into collapse. The cost of that decision that she had been carrying since, the 4 years of what she had called to Cole's face a professional hiatus, and what she had known privately was something closer to penance. She told them about Cole's placement, about the 6 weeks at Fort Harlow, about the moment on the steps when she had almost kept walking. She told them about the supply closet and the ketamine and Kellerman and Torres and the coordinator and Andre in the cardiac wing corridor. She told it all flat and clear and without editorializing, the way she had been trained to report. And when she finished, the room was quiet for a long moment. Harmon looked at the silent man. The silent man, for the first time, spoke. He had a Midwestern accent and a low voice, and he said, "The 4 years, the reintegration, was that your call or ours?" "Mine," she said. "And now?" She looked at him steadily. "I'm staying here," she said. "Full-time, nursing, this facility." She paused. "If an operational situation requires consultation or specific capability, I'm available under the terms we'll define on paper before I leave this room today. But I am not going back to active deployment. That chapter is finished." The silent man looked at her for a long time. Then he looked at Harmon. Harmon said, "The program is willing to accept modified engagement terms. We'll need the consultation provision formalized, standard NDA provisions, and biannual contact protocols." "Agreed," she said. "One additional condition," the silent man said. She waited. "The consultation provision includes a training component," he said. "Twice a year, you come in, you work with a cohort of incoming field medical personnel. 1 week each time." He paused. "Not operations, training. What you know about working in a medical environment under threat, that's not something we can get from a manual." She thought about it for exactly 5 seconds. 1 week, she said. "Twice a year. Non-negotiable on the duration. Non-negotiable on the duration, he agreed. She stood up and extended her hand. He shook it, so did Harmon. She was at the door when Harmon said, "Miss Vance." She turned. "For what it's worth," he said, "what you did here, the way you handled Radek's brother, in the corridor." He paused. "That was not in any protocol manual either." She looked at him. "No," she said, "it wasn't." She left. 1:09 p.m. She found General Bishop waiting for her in the main corridor. Not Harmon's men, not Cole. Bishop himself, in full uniform, standing with his hands clasped behind his back, in the particular stillness of a man who had come in person, because this conversation required the weight of in person, and he knew it. She stopped when she saw him. He looked at her for a moment, then he said, "Walk with me." They walked. Down the main corridor, past the nursing stations, past the doors of rooms where people were healing from things, past the waiting area where Torres had paced a hole in the floor yesterday morning, past the spot by the front desk where Mrs. Alvarez had said her son's name like a prayer. "The agreement Harmon presented," Bishop said. "I approved it. I want you to know that." "I know," she said. "I also want you to know that the decision to use this facility without your knowledge was mine. Not solely mine. It went up the chain and came back down approved. But I was the officer who signed off on the placement parameters. Cole was following my orders when he didn't disclose." He was quiet for a moment. "That was wrong. Operationally pragmatic and personally wrong. And I am telling you that directly because you are owed a direct statement." Maya walked beside him. She had known somewhere that the order had come from Bishop. She had filed it away and not looked at it too closely because there had not been time, and because looking at it too closely in the middle of an operational situation was a luxury she could not afford. But she had known. "Why me?" she said. "There were other assets you could have used as bait." "No," Bishop said. "Simply and completely, there were not. Radek's network would not have moved for anyone else. What you know, what you carry from Budapest, is specifically what they needed. You were the only key that fit that lock." He paused. "That is also not a sufficient justification. I know that. I am telling you the operational reality, not asking you to forgive it." She looked ahead. "The 240 patients," she said. "Yes. They did not consent to being in an operational environment. No, they did not. If your perimeter had failed—" "I know," he said. His voice was level but not neutral. It carried something in it. "I have been thinking about nothing else since 11:05 yesterday morning." He stopped walking. She stopped beside him. "I have been doing this work for 31 years, he said. And yesterday was the first time in 31 years that I sat in a command vehicle watching a screen and thought, I made a mistake. Not a tactical mistake, a human one." He held her eyes. "I wanted you to hear me say it." She looked at this man who had given her orders in rooms that didn't exist, and missions that had no names, and had brought her here, to this hospital, to this corridor, to the life she had found inside a plan she had not been told she was part of. "It worked," she said. "Yes," he said. "Radek's network is down. The intelligence is secured. Nobody in this building died." She paused. "I am not saying that makes it right. I am saying that is what happened." He nodded. "Don't do it again," she said. It was not a request. It was not deferential. It was the flat, clear statement of someone who had decided exactly where the line was and was drawing it with both hands. Bishop looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "Understood." She nodded once. She started walking again. He fell into step beside her for a few more paces, and then he stopped, because his path went toward the exit and hers went toward the nursing station, and they both knew it. "Maya," he said. She turned. "For the record," he said, "in 31 years, the people I have worked with, led, trained, relied upon." He paused. He was choosing his words with the care of a man for whom words were usually subordinate to action. You are the finest field mind I have encountered. The finest. He held her gaze. I'm sorry it took me this long to say so, and I'm sorry the context in which I'm saying it is what it is. She stood very still for a moment. General, she said, I'm a nurse. Something in his face that she had never seen in it before, warmth, genuine and unguarded, moved across it briefly. Yes, he said, you are. He walked toward the exit. She watched him go. Then she turned back toward the nursing station. 2:03 p.m. Vane was on time. He arrived at the nursing station at 13:59, coat on, no coffee in hand for once, with the specific attentiveness of a student, a word that would have been unimaginable in connection with Raymond Vane 24 hours ago, and was now simply accurate. She handed him a tablet. Kellerman first, she said. He will try to tell you a joke. Let him. It's part of the assessment. Vane looked at the tablet. The assessment of his healing, the assessment of his state of mind, she said, which affects his healing, which affects your surgical outcome. She started walking, which means it's your job, too. He was quiet for a step. I never thought of it that way. I know, she said. Kellerman received them with enormous satisfaction. He told a joke involving a surgeon, a nurse, and a hospital administrator that was actually quite good, and Vane laughed. A real laugh surprised out of him. And the surprise of hearing himself laugh appeared to surprise him further. And Kellerman looked at Maya with an expression that said clearly, this is the most interesting shift I have ever been a patient for. After Kellerman, Gutierrez. After Gutierrez, 2 post-operative patients in the South Wing, whose names Maya knew, and whose families she knew, and whose fears she had been tending to alongside their bodies for the days since their surgeries. Vane watched her work. He did not interfere. He asked questions, good questions, the questions of someone genuinely trying to learn, and she answered them directly and without condescension, because condescension had never served anyone, and because the questions told her something she had not expected. Raymond Vane, underneath everything, was still curious, still teachable. That was not nothing. 3:44 p.m. Alvarez was sitting up in his recovery bed, eating institutional pudding with the specific expression of a man who had faced mortality and won, and was now absolutely certain that institutional pudding was delicious. His mother was beside him, holding his hand with one of hers, and scrolling through her phone with the other, with the slightly dazed normalcy of someone who had released a terror so large that the ordinary world felt newly luminous in the aftermath. Maya came in for the post-procedure assessment. Torres was still there. He had apparently decided that today was a day he was present for in its entirety, and nobody had argued with him. How do you feel? Maya asked Alvarez. Like a new person, he said. I know that sounds dramatic, but it's true. I can feel the difference. I don't know how to explain it. He put his hand on his chest. It's quiet in here. It's never been quiet in here before. I didn't know that was unusual until it changed. Maya checked his vitals. His heart rate was clean and steady, the new rhythm holding perfectly, the procedure's result exactly as Sang had intended. It's going to stay quiet, Maya said. You're going to need to take it easy for 2 weeks, and then the cardiologist will clear you for graduated activity. No hard PT for 4 weeks. Alvarez looked at Torres. Torres looked at the ceiling. 4 weeks, Alvarez said. 4 weeks, Maya confirmed. Sergeant Torres is going to be very difficult to be around for 4 weeks, Alvarez said. I can hear you, Torres said, still looking at the ceiling. Mrs. Alvarez smiled. It was the first full smile Maya had seen from her. Uncomplicated, genuine, the smile of a woman who had set down something very heavy. You'll come and visit, won't you? Mrs. Alvarez said to Maya. It came out half question, half statement, the way you said something when you already knew the answer but needed to hear it. Maya looked at her, at Daniel, at Torres at the window, at the steady, clean lines on the cardiac monitor. Yes, she said. I'll come and visit. 5:17 p.m. The shift ended the way shifts ended, not with ceremony, but with handoff. The quiet transfer of responsibility that was its own kind of faith. One person trusting another with the people they had been caring for, passing the hours of attention and knowledge forward into the next pair of hands. She gave her handoff to the evening charge nurse, a solid, experienced man named Park, who had been at Fort Harlow for 7 years, and who received the briefing with the focused attention it deserved. She went through each patient methodically, thoroughly, without cutting corners on the last one, because the last one mattered as much as the first. When she was done, she picked up her bag from the nursing station. Carla was there. Of course, Carla was there. Carla was always there at the transitions, the way certain people always appeared at the moments that needed witnessing. Good shift, Carla said. Maya looked at her. Yesterday was better. Carla laughed. It was a real laugh, full and warm and slightly disbelieving. Yesterday was the most insane day of my entire career, and I once had a patient wake up mid-procedure and start singing. That's a good story, Maya said. You have better ones, Carla said. She crossed her arms. You're coming back tomorrow. 7:30, Maya said. 7:28, Carla said, like always. Maya almost smiled. Carla, she said. She stopped. There were things she wanted to say to this woman who had stood beside her for 6 weeks without knowing why she was standing beside her and without needing to know. Who had put a professional hand on her shoulder in the trauma bay the morning of the EKG. Who had moved 37 patients with 4 minutes notice because Maya's voice had asked her to. Who had spent yesterday's horror locked in a medication room calling the base security line with the calm efficiency of someone who faced the worst things and did the right thing anyway. She did not have the right words, or rather, she had the words, but they were inadequate to the reality they were trying to describe, which was the specific value of a person who chose, repeatedly, without fanfare, to show up. Thank you, she said, for all of it, from the beginning. Carla looked at her with her 12-year eyes, her seen everything eyes, her standing closer eyes. You would have done it without me, Carla said. No, Maya said, I would have done it differently without you. She picked up her bag. That matters. Carla nodded once. She turned back to the station. Then she stopped without turning back. Maya, she said. Yes. For what it's worth, a pause. What I saw in you that first week, when I told my husband you weren't what you said you were, she turned just slightly. I was right, but also, you are exactly what you say you are. Both things are true. She turned the rest of the way back to the station. See you at 7:28. Maya walked down the corridor toward the exit. 5:41 p.m. The evening was cool and clear, in the way evenings were after serious rain. The air stripped down to its essential clarity, the sky the particular deep blue that came when the day had been through something, and the light was still in it anyway. She stood on the front steps of Fort Harlow Medical Center and breathed it in. Her phone buzzed. She looked at it. Torres, coffee offer still stands. Name the time. She looked at the message for a moment. Then she typed back, Saturday morning. There's a place on base that opens at 7. She hit send and put the phone away. She stood on the steps for another moment. She thought about the supply closet in the dark. She thought about Vane's hand on her wrist in the trauma bay and the red mark it had left, and the way that mark had faded through the afternoon. She thought about a 22-year-old Marine hearing for the first time that his heart had always been quietly fighting him, and the specific relief in his face when he understood it was going to stop. She thought about a coordinator on a linoleum floor saying, Budapest. She thought about a young man in a maintenance uniform with grief in his hands, and the specific truth of telling him his brother was alive. She thought about General Bishop's face when she said she was staying, the architecture of respect that had moved through it, unbidden and real. She thought about the badge clipped to her scrubs. She looked down at it now. Her name, in clean, institutional font, against the white background, carrying the specific weight of something that had been taken and returned and was now hers in a way it had not been before. She had been trained to be a weapon, precise, deployable, effective, aimed at specific targets in specific circumstances for specific purposes. She had been good at it. She had been, as Bishop said, the finest. And the finest had cost her things she could not fully name yet and might not be able to name for a long time. And the cost was real, and she did not pretend it was not. But she had also, in the same hands, with the same precision, in the same measured and deliberate way, learned to be something else. She had learned it slowly, over 6 weeks of bad hospital coffee, and 12-hour shifts, and IV lines and wound dressings, and a Marine who told bad jokes, and a cardiac monitor that told the truth when nobody else would. She had learned that the precision that made her dangerous in one context made her extraordinary in another. She had learned that her stillness, which other people had sometimes feared, could also be the thing that held a frightened 22-year-old together when he most needed holding. She had learned that the ability to read a room, every angle, every entrance, every shift in the weight of the air, was also the ability to read a patient, a family, a colleague, a moment. She had learned in the most unexpected place that she was not one thing. She was not the weapon, and she was not the nurse. She was the person who had chosen, standing on these steps in the rain yesterday morning, with a phone in her hand and a discharge badge in her pocket, and 20 minutes before the world came apart, to turn around, to go back in. Not because she had been ordered to, not because the mission required it, because there were people inside who needed someone to turn around. That choice made in the rain, on a Wednesday, at the bottom of a set of stairs, that was the truest thing she knew about herself. Not Budapest, not the operations without names, not the 4 years of penance or the skills that live below conscious thought. The truest thing was the turning around. She stepped down the stairs and walked toward the parking lot. The evening air was clear and clean around her, and behind her, Fort Harlow Medical Center stood as it had always stood, absorbing, tending, restoring, and inside it, in a recovery room, a young Marine's heart beat with a steadiness it had never known before, clean and unobstructed, exactly as it was supposed to beat, because someone had refused to step back when they were told to. Maya Vance clipped her badge, walked to her car, and went home to the place she had finally decided to stay. Not the room with the bag under the bed, not the post, not the safe house, but here, in this town, in this work, in this life that had chosen her as surely as she had chosen it. She was a nurse. She was also a lioness. And for the first time in 4 years, those two things were not in conflict. They were, simply and completely, the same thing.